Hey everybody, this is AJ, and this is the Just Stand Up podcast. We're coming in for episode, I want to believe it's number 4 now. I just want to start off by thanking Aaron over at Love MMA Apparel. He's become technically an official sponsor of the podcast. He hooked me up with some gear to make the podcast a little bit better. He's been a brother to me for a couple years now, and so I just want to start the podcast by saying thanks to him. Now we're going to move on to the real stuff. I'm just gonna jump right in. We're just gonna do fight news recap, kind of shit. Good lord, stuff like that. Just buttermouth right there. So just starting off for the recap. This interests me. Probably won't interest a lot of people. Jose Shorty Torres picked up unanimous decision win at Brave Combat Federation. For people who remember, don't remember. Jose was one of the big prospects about a year ago outside of the UFC that everybody wanted to get signed. He was a multi-weight champion down in Titan, and he got picked up for the UFC. I think he went 1-1. Even his one win was a little bit controversial. His opponent got knocked out during a slam, and then Jose got Jose. I don't know how he prefers it. Shorty Torres. We'll just go with that. His loss was a pretty one-sided, if I remember that correctly. And with the UFC seemingly getting rid of the flyweights, not knowing what they're doing, and they were cutting a lot of flyweights when that news came out originally. He was let go. He was picked up by Brave Combat Federation over in the Middle East, or I want to say it's Middle East area. He picked up unanimous decision win this week and got him back in his winning ways. Even still, he had a rough start in the UFC and then getting cut because of the flyweight debacle. He's still one of the more interesting prospects in the sport, given that he was able to pick up wins at multiple weights when he was in Titan. So that was just the first little tidbit thrown there. Pretty much only the hardcore MMA fans are even know who Shorty Torres is. But just wanted to throw that in there for him. The big card everybody was watching this weekend was UFC St. Petersburg, Russia, not Florida where I live. Alistair Overeem picked up a first round TKO over Alexei Olenek. That was a good little fight. Alexei came out throwing some he came out with that old man strength, just throwing some haymakers. It looked like he had Overeem walled at one point, which I'm a big fan of Overeem. Even most people are. He's one of the better strikers in the heavyweight division. He's one of the more tenured heavyweights in all of MMA right now. I want to say they said it was his 90th combat fight between kickboxing, Muay Thai, MMA, all that good stuff was against Alexei. That is just a ridiculous career, even with his setbacks for the PED usage and whatnot. So I'm just going to recap the fights and throw in the who they should fight next at the same time. So Alistar was number 7 going into that fight. Alexei was number 9. If you're above the guy, if you're ranked above the guy you beat, there's not a lot of room to be begging for a fight someone ranked higher above you. He was supposed to fight Alexander Volkov. I'm trying not to mix up Volkanovski down at featherweight. He was supposed to fight Volkov, who right now is currently sitting at number 6, Reams at number 7, and he said he still wants to fight Volkov. Alistar said he'd like to aim for sometime September for that fight. So, I mean, he's doing the work for me. That's exactly the fight I would have said to make coming off that win. Reem's always 1-2 wins away from arguing for a title shot. Beat Volkov, beat one more guy, boom, you got a title shot. He's always got that name that's going to carry him, and he's going to perform. He's either going to come in and give us a pretty decent fight, especially now that he's kind of moved away from tentative over Reem. He'll still give you good fights. He knows the UFC will throw him in a title fight if he picks up more than 2 wins in a row usually. The big fight a lot of people were more interested in was Islam Makhachev. I hope I pronounced that right. Again, people, I am just dog shit with names. He extended his win streak to 5 in a row in the division. He was facing, I believe, a UFC newcomer. It was a good fight. He showed a little bit of everything in that fight. There's not a whole lot to say about it. I missed most of the fights this weekend. That's the problem with those middle of the day cards. Stuff does have to happen. I caught a few highlights of those cards, but I wasn't done, running errands, doing the chores until right when the main event started. I did see some good highlights, some stuff that you'd want to see out of him in that fight. With that win streak he's got, and he's got some good little names under his belt. I remember when I was looking at it before, I remembered most of those names have been ranked at some point or another for guys he's beat, even if it was just number 15, just barely in there. So I think it's time we give him a top 15 opponent. I was looking at the top 15 right before I started recording this, and he's not going to get 15. Somehow Nate Diaz is still ranked number 15, which that's just ridiculous. There's zero reason for Nate Diaz to be ranked at any point in time in 2019. He hasn't fought since the second Conor fight. This is just, another showing of the UFC rankings being just horseshit. So Nate's number 15. Charles Oliveira is number 14. He just got booked against Nick Lentz for, I believe, their third fight, which is a little bit, that doesn't happen very often in the UFC. And it's not like there's not an overwhelming amount of guys they could have booked him up with otherwise. So that was a weird booking. So really with Islam, that leaves him, realistically, that's going to leave him with James Vick, who's ranked number 13, or possibly Alex Hernandez, who's ranked number 12. Both of them, I believe, are coming off losses. I want to say Vick's last fight was the Justin Gaethje knockout, and Hernandez was the Cowboy Cerrone loss. So it's time to put him in the top 15. Let's avoid, I'm sure a lot of people, this was the first matchup that came to mind when I was thinking about it, but we need to avoid that. Let's not book Islam versus Gregor Gillespie right now. We've got some names breaking into the top 15 in that, top 15, top 10 area. Let's stop trying to kill, contenders off with making them fight too early. Let's, keep them on a little bit of separate path so maybe they actually do get up to the title and then we don't just have, and we're not just killing them off early. The UFC seems to love to do that shit. It makes no sense whatsoever. Third big fight of the card was Roxanne Modafferi, a follower of the page. Hello, Roxy. She picked up what a lot of people would consider a surprising win over Antonia Shevchenko, Valentina's little sister. Roxanne did go into the fight ranked higher. She was ranked number 7, and Antonia was ranked number 12. But a lot of people were just assuming Antonio was going to put a striking clinic on and just overwhelm Roxanne. And a lot of people were thinking it was just going to be almost a squash fight for Antonia. So it's good to see Roxy pick up that win. Like I've said a few times, I'm always biased to followers of mine when it comes to fight cards. I always want them to win just inherently. So it was good to hear Roxanne picked up a split decision win over Antonia. If we're going for who she should fight next, logically, again, it's the same thing with Overeem that I said with Overeem. It's hard to say, they should definitely get someone ranked above them. But if we're just looking at who's ranked above Roxanne, she's number 7, so we have Alexis Davis at number 6. That fight could work. Joanne Calderwood's number 5, but they train together now. Joanne moved out to Syndicate MMA, so that one's off the table most likely. And then Joanna's number 4. So, I guess logically we could go with Alexis or Joanna. Roxanne's seems like the type of girl who'll take just about any fight. She seems to be a company person, so they could give her another lower ranked opponent. But I think with that win, kind of stopping that little hype train, that they should reward her with someone ranked above. Sorry. Other fights that were on this weekend out of the the big 4 or 5 companies, Rizin had another card this weekend. Just going off the names that most likely people know. King Mo lost his bid to become the inaugural Rizin light heavyweight champion. He fought Jiri Prochazka, maybe? Again, I'm just terrible with the names, especially some of these foreign names, guys. He lost by TKO. King Mo's been a staple of the MMA community, light heavyweight and heavyweight community for a while. He's fought for Bellator, Strikeforce, Rizin. He was always a name that was surprising, never got picked up by the UFC. After losing that fight, he did announce at the post-fight press conference this is going to be his last year fighting, so you can expect maybe 1, maybe 2 fights from King Mo before he retires. If he feels it's time to go, it's time to go. I know he did pick up a few L's in Bellator, so it just might be the end of the road for him. He might just be losing the motivation, or he just feels that it's time for him to retire. And what is by far the most interesting thing to come out of all the MMA this weekend for me, Kyoji Horiguchi stopped Ben 10 win in the first round of the Horiguchi's bantamweight title fight. And what was announced after the fight is that they're scheduling Horiguchi to rematch Darion Caldwell, Bellator's 135 champion, for Darion's belt in Bellator. For people who don't know, I know a lot of people don't watch Rizin because of the time limits or, just the UFC bias where they only think they should watch the UFC. Horiguchi has stepped his game up immeasurably since he left the UFC. He's fighting at 135 in Rizin, and he's put it in a whole new gear since he left the UFC. It has been he's one of the most must-see fighters outside of the UFC right now as far as entertainment wise. And so what people may not have known was Bellator and Rizin, they do have a little bit of a partnership. They do send fighters to and from each other if they need to or want to set up some special matchups. So earlier or later last year, I want to say it was, or earlier this year, they had Horiguchi versus Darian Caldwell in Rizin for Horiguchi's Rizin bantamweight belt. And Horiguchi won that fight, I believe, by stoppage. I'm not just going off the top of my head, I'm not positive. But I believe he won that by stoppage. And so there was a clause that since Darian got to come over to Rizin and try to win the Rizin belt, that after that, Horiguchi would get to try that. So now Horiguchi gets to come to Bellator, and they're going to fight for Caldwell's belt later on in the year. I wouldn't be surprised if they tried to throw it on that New York City card that has, I think it's Chael and Lyoto are main eventing that card. But that might be a little bit, they've already got some decent names on that card as far as Bellator goes. They may not want to stack it too much. Oh goodness, I've got my stuff all out of order here. So that's as far as the recap goes. Again, there were some good fights on the cards. I didn't catch them all. I mostly had to catch highlights because, UFC was in the middle of the day, Saturday, running errands and whatnot. And Rizin's at, like 3 a.m. if you live Eastern Standard Time. So it was mostly just catching that. So just moving forward for the fights we have this week, this is actually a surprisingly good week. This is like a sleeper week almost for MMA. I don't know if people have looked at the cards, but UFC is putting on a tremendous card. We'll go over those fights in a second. And then Bellator has a very good sleeper card. They're both on Saturday. They're going up against each other. The battle of ESPN Plus versus DAZN. So let me just pull up that UFC card, because the UFC card has ranked fighters all the way on the early prelim, not the early prelims, regular prelims, but early prelims. We have Jim Miller versus Jason Gonzalez. Jim Miller's always game. He's always 1-2 fights away from being in the top 15. The UFC still have it listed as Jessica Penne versus Jodie Esquibel, but that is incorrect. Jessica Penne, for some reason, had to pull out of the fight this week. I don't believe it was disclosed, which is odd because she was modeling on Instagram for... she was at a modeling agency this week, so don't know why she pulled out of the fight, but it was good for that. And then opening the night is Court McGee versus Diego Lima. Out of these fights, they're all named fighters. They're all close to the rankings. They should be. I'm guessing all three of those will be, kind of scraps, a little bit of everything in them. Probably all three will go to decision. I don't really see any violent stoppages coming from any of those guys. On the regular televised prelims, we have Ben Saunders versus Takeshi Sato. I'm going to just be dead honest. I have no idea who Takeshi Sato is. Maybe it was from me not watching MMA much last year. Maybe he's just a new signed guy. I didn't check. So we have Saunders versus Sato. We have Andrei Arlovsky versus Augusto Sakai, who I pulled up Sakai earlier. Let me see what he had. Sakai's had one fight in the UFC officially. He beat Chase Sherman by TKO in the third round last year at the Thiago Santos Eric Anders card. He won on Dana White's Contender Series Season 1 for the Brazil version, so that's how he got into the UFC. He had a few fights in Bellator. The only name that people recognize that he fought was Czech Congo. He lost a split decision to Congo. So, Arlovsky's number 15 right now. He's hanging in there. I try not to make huge predictions for the fights. I just like to report on them. And then, let's see, the first fight, the way the UFC orders them is hilarious, so I always do them backwards. Carla Esparza is taking on Lavina Souza, who I believe was the former Invicta strawweight champion. She got signed in the UFC. Let me double check if I'm correct on that. I want to at least, somewhat have the right answers. Yep, I was right. Strawweight champion. Let's see who she's beat. No one most people are going to recognize, sadly. This is just going to be a trash podcast. This is just sorry, people. I was sick all week. This is me just trying to get the podcast out so I stay on a schedule and keep myself on track. Don't let it slip out. So the main card for the Fort Lauderdale card, let's see, we have Roosevelt Roberts versus Thomas Gifford. Again, I have no idea. I'm sorry, people. We'll just blame you for that. We have one of the kings of violence at bantamweight, John Lineker, taking on Corey Sandhagen. Anytime Lineker fights, that's a must-watch TV. Little Hands of Stone. if you don't like watching John Lineker, there might be something wrong with you. We have Glover Teixeira, he's ranked number 11 right now somehow. He's fighting Ion Kutalaba. That should be interesting. What I'm sure will get most people's attention is Alex Cowboy Oliveira fighting Mike Perry. Not a Mike Perry fan. Am a Cowboy Oliveira fan. That should be that's most likely going to be your fight of the night right there. That's got all the violence potential whatsoever. In the co-main event, the most disgusting fight on the card, the UFC for some fucking reason are giving Greg Hardy another co-main event slot after his disastrous debut on the TJ versus Cejudo card where he got a DQ and just had an all-around horrible performance. No idea why he's still in the UFC. I think it's one of the worst things the UFC is doing right now is letting him still be in the UFC. I'll never agree with that. I'll never talk nice about it. Sorry if you don't like it. Tough titties. But as far as I'm concerned, fuck Greg Hardy. Shouldn't be in the UFC. He definitely shouldn't be on his second co-main event. And then we have the main event of Jacare Souza fighting a late replacement in Jack Hermanson. It was scheduled to be Jacare versus Yoel. Yoel pulled out. And Jack Hermanson, coming off that quick stoppage of David Branch, stepped in to get Jacare to take this fight. The UFC promised him a title shot if he wins, which I said last week I do not believe will happen whatsoever. We just had Israel win the interim title. He wants to take a little bit of a break, fight Robert later on in the year. I have a hard time seeing, after that fight's over, I have a hard time seeing there not being someone trying to jump in there and take that, promise from Jacare if he wins this weekend. He wouldn't be able to fight for the title until, I'm guessing, February, March of next year. And knowing the way the UFC works, the second someone else has a good win, the UFC will be more than willing to plug and play them into that spot. So that's just, the quick reminder of what's on the card for UFC Fort Lauderdale this weekend. It's a real shame Greg Hardy's on that card. I would have loved to go to that card, but I'm not going to pay any money whatsoever to support the UFC putting Greg Hardy on a UFC card. Let's switch over to Bellator, Bellator has a equally, as far as main card wise goes, their main card may be better. Opening up the main card is Gaston Bolanos versus Nathan Stolen. If you don't know who Gaston Bolanos is, he is a tremendous kickboxer who's made the transition to MMA. I believe he's 4-1. He's had several highlight finishes. He has one of the prettiest spinning elbow highlight knockouts you will ever see. If you don't need a lot of time to check out his highlights since, only a few fights in MMA. Go check out Gaston Bolanos, GastonBolanos on YouTube. Gaston Bolanos highlights. That should probably be all you need. That man is a wizard of striking, extremely entertaining. If he's fighting, someone's most likely getting the violent sleeps. After that, we have former UFC lightweight champion Benson Henderson is taking on Adam Piccolotti. I'm not going to promise a lot of violence from that fight. I try not to make predictions, but I know I've looked at the careers between Benson and Adam. It should be Benson win, but Benson's had a rough road since he got to Bellator. He's taken some extremely hard fights, and I think they're trying to slow him down now so they can actually get some wins out of Benson. Third fight on the main card, we have Phil Davis versus Liam McGeary in a rematch. Davis won their first fight a few years ago by unanimous decision. I think they're just trying to find out who they're going to have as the light heavyweight title contender for Bader when he goes back down to light heavyweight to defend his light heavyweight belt. I assume they're going to have him defend his light heavyweight next, and then they'll have Bader defend his heavyweight after that. They'll just stagger it like that if they're going to let him keep both belts, which it seems like they're going to. Co-main event, it's a double title fight card. I don't know. I feel like I didn't say that. Coming from Bellator this weekend, we have Alima Leigh McFarland. She is defending her flyweight title. I looked up her opponent. Nothing I'm going to tell y'all is going to get y'all excited or you're going to know who she is. I'm sorry. Just being honest on that one. And then the best fight, or the most interesting fight of the weekend for me, we have King of Violence, Rory McDonald, the Red King, taking on John Fitch in a title fight and also a fight as part of the welterweight Grand Prix that Bellator is putting on this year. Rory McDonald going into the Grand Prix is the champion. Every fight he has will be a title fight as long as he continues winning. So opening up for his first round of the Grand Prix is against John Fitch. John Fitch, one of the better welterweights. People just don't like to admit because his style is not fan friendly. But John Fitch has some quality wins under his belt. They're taking that on. I believe the winner fights Neiman Gracie in a title fight, which will probably be early fall if I had to guess. So I mean, between Bellator and UFC, I mean, Bellator's got 2 title fights for you. Every fight has at least one good name in it. I know it'll be on. Since that's a welterweight Grand Prix fight, I believe it will exclusively be on DAZN. I don't believe it will be on Paramount. Sorry about that, people who don't want to purchase DAZN. I don't really want to either, but I do want to see that title fight. It interests me more than UFC Fort Lauderdale card. The Greg Hardy shit just turned me off of that card. I'm sure people will just tell me to get over it and just keep watching, but nah, fuck it. Fuck him too. So that's just the card breakdown, the card recaps from this past weekend and what's coming up. Just moving on to the news now. Again, this isn't going to be the greatest podcast, guys. Sorry. I was sick all weekend. I got to experience vertigo for the first time this weekend. That was very interesting. So this is just me just trying to get stuff out, get content out. So as far as news, this is Bellator news. Leslie Smith, former UFC bantamweight, has signed with Bellator. She plans on competing at 145. She was released from the UFC on a 2-fight win streak. The UFC was looking for a way to cut her. I think everybody knew that. Leslie Smith is a huge proponent of the unionization of fighters, and she spent every moment she had campaigning for that. So she was on a 2-fight win streak. The UFC wanted to cut her, but they knew if they cut her just straight off the win streak that people would be mad. So I don't remember who she was scheduled to fight, but Leslie's opponent came in overweight. Leslie refused to fight her, and so the UFC took that as their way to cut her and say she was being difficult to work with, and so she was cut. She's been a free agent for a while. That was later on last year, I believe, that they cut her. So it's good to see Bellator picked her up. It's good to see they weren't scared to hire her, even with her being such a vocal proponent of the unionization of fighters. Sorry, I got a text coming that got my attention. Other interesting news. This one's going to be just for like the hardest of hardcore fans. Burt Watson, Babysitter to the Stars, is starting his own MMA promotion. If you don't know who Burt is, Burt would be what I would call, he was the father figure for all fighters when it came to fight week. If you've ever heard the "We Rollin" scream at any point when you've seen guys in the back, that was Burt Watson. He was like a hype man. He would talk to the fighters. He would calm them down. He would hype them up. He would do whatever was needed. He would direct them to where they needed to go. When you see them making the walk through the back up towards the tunnel, Burt used to be the one leading them for all that. I've never heard a bad word about Burt Watson from any fighter. It seemed like every fighter was extremely distraught when they learned the UFC released him. We still have no idea. I believe the UFC released him because he was starting to become, a little bit more popular, and they don't want to take away from the fighters, or they don't want to. I shouldn't say that. UFC loves taking away from the fighters. They don't want any distractions from the UFC as a brand. They don't want any of their individual employees becoming, huge stars who aren't the fighters. And Burt was starting to get a little traction a few years ago before he got cut. So he's starting his own MMA promotion. That's extremely, interesting. Burt Watson, I believe, is like 70 years old, and he's just now getting into the promotion game. I mean, most people are retired, sitting at home, sipping on their tea, watching TV. Burt Watson's out here starting MMA promotion. The first card is going to be June 15th at the Hard Rock Event Center in Seminole Hard Rock Hotel and Casino in Hollywood, Florida. So, I mean, that might be worth a drive for me. I think Hollywood, Florida, I have no idea where that is, to be honest. I feel like I've heard it's 2 or 3 hours from me. That might be worth a drive out there to go support old Burt. This is technically jiu-jitsu news, but it has so many MMA fighters on it that I have to talk about it. Chael Sonnen's Submission Underground, his jiu-jitsu promotion, they announced their 8th card, which this will stream live on Fight Pass. So I guess if you're one of the 3 people who still has their Fight Pass subscription, you can watch this card. The main event is Austin Vanderfort, better known as Mr. Van Zant, Paige's husband, is taking on Jake Shields. What else do we have on the card? We have Jake Ellenberger's taking on Diego Sanchez. Frank Mir's competing against a dude who, I'm sorry, I've never even heard. It's legitimate, just jiu-jitsu guy. We have Pat Healy, former Strikeforce UFC vet, taking on Gilbert Melendez of the same, promotions. Everybody knows Gilbert Melendez. We have Craig Jones, one of jiu-jitsu's biggest names right now. He's taking on former fighter Dennis Hallman. So, I mean, Chael went out. Chael must have gone through the contacts of his phone and just started texting people like, hey, you want to do some jiu-jitsu? Because that they had several MMA names on that card. Usually it's just one or two. I know Chad Mendez competed on there once. Chael somehow managed to have John versus Dan Henderson as a match at Submission Underground. Say what you want about Chael, but he can pull out some interesting names for these jiu-jitsu cards that he puts on. So that might be worth a watch if anyone's more of a jiu-jitsu fan or practitioner of jiu-jitsu. That might be able to get your attention since it does have some MMA names and some good jiu-jitsu names on it. Let's see, other good news. This I've already talked about on my page plenty. I had plenty of posts about it, but I just want to take every opportunity possible to give props to this. Dustin Poirier has been auctioning off his entire fight kit from his title fight with Max Holloway to benefit the Good Fight Foundation. Just Google that, Good Fight Foundation. It's on Dustin's page on all the social medias. He does this after each fight now. He finds a different charity cause in his Louisiana area that he grew up in to support with the proceeds from auctioning off his fight kits. So this time the cause was building a playground that's handicap accessible for children. So like kids in wheelchairs, they just, a lot of people don't realize. When I went to college for education and individuals with disability program. So a lot of people don't realize most playgrounds are not handicap accessible. And, if you're a young child, you just want to fit in. You want to be able to go out and play with your friends. So this was a cause that when I heard it, I was extremely happy to hear, proud of Dustin for choosing this. And I just want to give props to the other fighters who donated. Max Holloway donated his gloves immediately after the fight. He went in the back, signed them, gave them to Dustin and his wife. Alan Joban and Eric Anders both donated their fight kits to the cause. And then owner of American Top Team, Dan Lambert, he's donating Dustin's gym fees for his UFC 236 camp, all to the Good Fight Foundation. So just take any second I can to give props to those guys. That's a beautiful thing that they're doing, using their platform to be able to help children with disabilities actually be able to have somewhere that they feel they can play at, and they'll actually be able to keep up with all their friends and have stuff built for them. That it's a beautiful thing, and I'm very proud of Dustin for doing that and thankful for that. Our last two interesting news things. Possibly everybody's least favorite female fighter, Angela Magana, had a bit of a scary situation this week. She has a fight scheduled with Kira Batar at Combate Americana, however you pronounce it. I'm sorry. She was supposed to fight, I believe it's this upcoming Friday. And last week she went into the hospital. She needed a nerve block for, I believe it was a herniated disc. It was some disc issue, and she just needed a nerve block procedure. And she had complications with anesthesia and went into a coma for 2 days. She came out of the coma, I want to say it was a day or two ago, finally started to become responsive. So whether you like her or not, she's a part of the MMA community. It's not something you want to hear about. And then what is most likely the most interesting yet not shocking news. Got to start off the day yesterday making a meme about this. Darren Till was arrested in Spain for stealing a taxi and trashing a hotel along with several friends. Maybe George hit him harder than we thought. Maybe he's just out there partying in Spain. A lot of people from England were commenting on the post saying that area of Spain is where the English go to party and whatnot. Bro, you're a professional fighter. You're a top-ranked fighter. You got to represent yourself better than that. If I'm just going to be honest, I'm sure people will give me shit for saying that. But you can't be doing that, man. You're a grown-ass man. You got a girlfriend. You got kids. Probably shouldn't be trashing hotels and stealing taxis in Spain. Let's just be real here. That's it for the news. Again, I said this will not be the best podcast whatsoever. So we still have the 10 questions to do. I'm not going to lie. The questions were not the best this week. This is probably just an off week for podcasting. I just wanted to, like I said, I just want to get it done. So we'll just move on to those. We always end it with that. So like I put out on my page, I want 10 good questions. The good part wasn't quite met this week. 5 questions are all strict fight related questions. 5 are just kind of goofier or personal questions. So we're just going to go straight into the fight questions. So the first one was, should push kicks, which I believe this person means oblique kicks, be banned? And the simple answer to that is no. It's a legitimate technique you can use. Fighters are training it. Why is it okay that you can shin somebody in the head and elbow them in the face on the ground, but you can't push kick? Yeah, it damages your knee. So does a knee bar. Sorry. If it's a legitimate technique, it's not cheating. It's a legitimate martial arts technique. I believe Stephen Thompson came out against it, which was fascinating because Stephen Thompson's kicked so many people in the head. It's not even funny. Doesn't see a problem with that. No, whoever's starting this campaign for making oblique kicks be legal, I think Rampage is probably the one who started after John used them on him. If you don't like it, I guess you got to defend it, but it's a legitimate technique, and we shouldn't be banning legitimate techniques. If anything, we should be open to more legitimate techniques that are banned now being made legal. I mean, banning them is just going the opposite direction we should be going in. So that's a simple answer for that. The second question is a fight question. It's a little more fun one. I actually like this question. What would be your hypothetical bracket for the UFC starting a 165 division with a Grand Prix? I'm going to pull a few fights that have already been used. I'm going to do an 8-person Grand Prix, so that's 4 fights at the beginning. Let's take Masvidal versus Askren. They would both be excellent at 165. Throw that in as your first fight. Now I'm going to pick one out from 55. Let's go ahead and pull Cowboy versus Iaquinta. Throw that in there. Throw that on the side of the bracket. And then I honestly do not want to take champions from either division right away. Let them come in later. Who else would be good at 165 for that? Rafael Dos Anjos versus Kevin Lee. Kevin Lee is campaigning for both of them to weigh in at 165 instead of 170 as a bit of a way to make a statement, which, Kevin, come on, buddy. We know you come up with some dumb ideas, but you're just going to make you and RDA cut extra weight. And the entire point is you moving up. The UFC is not going to give you the division just off that, but take that, throw that in there. Who else would be good? I'd like to say Tony Ferguson. Let's assume this dream scenario, Tony Ferguson isn't having so many mental health issues. Throw Tony in there, and then throw maybe Stephen Thompson in there. Oh, wait, no. Pull Thompson out, Pettis back in. There we go. Pettis versus Tony at a rematch in 165. That could be fun. That'd be a good start. I mean, 165, I don't understand Dana White's logic for not taking it. He says 155 and 170 are so stacked, he doesn't want to mess with those. Well, if they're so stacked, that means there's obviously talent there that could be spread between the three, and it allows fighters to jump back and forth. You're perfectly fine with making interim belts. You're perfectly fine opening a women's 145 division that has, 2 legitimate 145ers signed to the division. We have Chris and we have Megan. But you're not okay with opening 165, which is pretty much the optimal weight to get a weight class out of. Like, that's close to the average weight of most adult males. I mean, I don't understand his argument against it. It does not make a lot of sense. There is so much talent. You could fill all 3 divisions easily. It's going to allow more competitive fights. You like to claim everything's a super fight. Well, there's your chance. If someone doesn't want to lose their belt at 175, you would obviously have to bump 170 up to 175. If someone doesn't want to lose their welterweight belt and someone doesn't want to lose their 55 belt, throw them at let them have the fight at 165. It's a fun division. I don't see why it's not made right now. I'm sorry, guys. I'm still sick. I'm just out of it. Foggy as all get out. Third question. What's the current state of 125 with Cejudo fighting Marlon at 135 for the vacant belt? We don't really know. Let's just be honest here. Dana hasn't really talked about it since the TJ and Cejudo fight, from what I've seen. The UFC did book Joseph Benavidez versus Jussier Formiga at 125. That's on the Cejudo and Marlon card. So maybe that's a sign. Maybe their plan is if Cejudo loses that, he'll actually have to go back to 125 and defend the belt against the winner of Benavidez versus Jussier. I believe that this is the fight. I don't know. Cejudo claims to be the savior of flyweight, but he's doing absolutely nothing to actually go back and show that he wants to keep the division around. So I've talked about that, I believe, 2 or 3 podcasts already. So we don't really know the state. Dana's being, typical Dana dickhead about it, not saying anything, just trying to scare people. So I can't give you a straight answer what the current state is of 125. I mean, that Benavidez fight gives us a little bit of hope that the division is going to stick around, but they've still cut a ridiculous amount of flyweights. So that's a good question because I can't give you the answer. Question number 4, should Tony get the winner of Khabib and Dustin? Guys, can we please just take a minute? Just please. Tony Ferguson is having legitimate mental health issues. He appeared to have a psychotic break. He kidnapped his son from his wife and her family. He took his son and ran out the back door, jumped over a fence in the rain with his child, who was not even fully dressed, and ran away from the mother of his children. He was digging through the wall. He was knocking out drywall, digging through the walls because he thought there was listening devices or robots or some shit in his walls, and he thought there was a listening device in his leg. Tony has clearly had severe mental health issues, and the last thing we need to be doing is putting him back in a cage where he's just going to get punched in the head and create more brain damage. Let's give him a fucking year off, people. He does not need to jump right back in. That's the last thing you should do. I don't want to even think about this as a possibility, but since Tony's blocked me, I guess it's perfectly fine to talk about. We do not need a Chris Benoit in MMA. For those of you who don't know, Chris Benoit was a wrestler. I believe his finisher was like a diving headbutt or something. It was something that was always head trauma. I think it was a diving headbutt off the top rope or something. And he had so much head trauma that he eventually snapped and he killed his wife and children, and then he killed himself. I'm not trying to say Tony Ferguson is going to do that, but we're looking at a man who is clearly having severe mental health issues. We need to let him step away from the sport for a little bit. Guarantee him his place back in the sport if that will get him to step away and take the break that he needs and get the help that he needs. He's out there claiming that he's been cleared and everything. I do not believe him. We need to chill on the Tony talk. Let him get healthy. He's not going to fix this issue in 2 weeks like he's trying to claim he has. But just stop with the Tony talk. You're just going to encourage. All this Tony talk is just going to make him want to come back even sooner, and that's the last thing that we need to happen. So chill on the Tony talk. Just please. Let's stop thinking about them as fighters, and remember, these are people who have lives. He endangered his wife and his child's life with this mental break. He endangered his own life. He endangered his family's lives. We need to just step back from the Tony talk. Let him get healthy first. He's still got plenty of years in his prime. Let him get healthy, please. So, done with that. Let him get healthy. Question number 5 for fight questions. Are the pound-for-pound rankings inaccurate? I hate pound-for-pound talk, every bit about it. Pound-for-pound is simply, it's basically a drinking game / drinking discussion for fighters. Like, oh, what would happen if Mighty Mouse got 2 feet taller and could fight at light heavyweight? Pound for pound is just a game for MMA fans. The UFC creates pound for pound rankings just as a way to promote their fighters more. They can claim, oh, they're the pound for pound, number 1, number 2, number 3. It's a silly notion. It's just a discussion. It's just a silly, fun discussion for fans. It should never be used as promotion. So are the rankings inaccurate? They're ridiculous regardless. There's no real way to quantify those rankings. Who's pound for pound? The only way you can quantify that is if the fighters fought. They obviously can't. You can't have a flyweight fight a light heavyweight. You can't have a heavyweight fight a lightweight. It's just silliness. You should pay them no mind whatsoever, especially the UFC's version of them. If you pay attention close enough, within a week or 2 of a fight, if someone's on that pound-for-pound list, they are going to start creeping up that list. The way the UFC do their rankings is they have a bunch of panelists. I don't even know what the qualifications of these people are. Some of them seem like some of them seems like they have about as many subscribers as my podcast does, which is only 500 something. And they get to vote on the UFC rankings every week. And the way they vote on the rankings is they go each division, pound for pound, everything. They just go, okay, everybody, write what you believe is the correct ranking. They take that, they average them together. That's how you get your rankings. There's no reason to give them any validity in your mind whatsoever. It's just a joke. So, are they inaccurate? Probably, because it's a silly ass concept that's just meant to be for drinking at the bar and you're bored in between fights. I'm extra snarky today, as some people would say. So just moving on to the 5 goofier questions. We're almost done. Dream non-MMA and MMA related guest for the podcast. I mean, I guess if we're going non-MMA, I guess I would have to say it's Bert Kreischer. He helped change my life with that weight loss competition and get me to lose weight. I've met Bert a few times. He's extremely entertaining for the, minute or 2 you can talk to him. He knows absolutely nothing about the sport, so that would not be an MMA podcast whatsoever. That would just be a bullshit podcast. Dream MMA guest? I don't know. That one's a little harder. There's so many. Like, I don't think I would want to interview Cowboy, who he's my favorite. He's a little crazy. I don't think you can keep him focused that long. over a Skype phone call. Who would be good? Daniel Cormier would be interesting. He's had an interesting career. Mighty Mouse would be extremely interesting, especially with him in ONE FC now. Fun fact, Mighty Mouse is on fucking vacation 20 minutes from my house down there in St. Petersburg. He's over at St. Pete Beach on vacation. I'm up here in Dunedin. So that was fun to see. Just scrolling on Instagram last night and see, oh, he's at, the blah, blah, blah hotel. I'm not going to give it out. Down there in St. Pete. He'd be an interesting guest. Who else would be interesting? Michael Chandler's someone I would always want to talk to. Oh, you know what? Okay, I know. Fucking Chael Sonnen would be the most interesting. I feel like my type of bullshit, his type of bullshit would mesh very well for that. Because, I mean, these podcasts that I'm doing so far, since I'm still not interviewing people, which is something obviously I'm going to get to eventually, it's just self-teaching myself, having to figure all this stuff out. I feel like our type of bullshit would mesh very well and could be very entertaining. I don't know. I need to go take some cold medicine or something. Second, sillier question. You can only spend one weekend with a fighter. Who and why? Okay, that's the one where I go back to, yes, I will take Cowboy now. Go chill at the BMF ranch for a weekend. That would be extremely fun. They got paintball. I love to shoot. They've got the fancy clay thrower that he lives pretty close to a clay course. I grew up on dirt bikes. I know he's got dirt bikes. He's got a little track set up for that. They actually are stepping out and they are making, weekends at the BMF ranch a thing where you can actually pay and go hang out, stay in the dorms and whatnot, and do basically whatever you want that's available there at the ranch. That'd probably be the number one. Number two would probably be Tim Kennedy. Just if I can have Tim Kennedy's attention, I want to assume the weekend can start on Friday. If I can have Tim Kennedy Friday to Sunday and just use all that time him teaching me how to shoot better, that would be extremely valuable. Just one-on-one time, that would be fascinating. Just hearing his stories while learning that. That's a skill I'd like to be better at, and he's one of the best on the planet for that. So those are probably two good options. Question number 3, I don't even consider silly. I consider this fucking stupid. But I just had to answer it so I could give this answer. Male versus female fights get approved. What's the first fight you would make? Dude, I would make whoever asked that stupid-ass question fight Cyborg or Amanda Nunes. I don't understand why people want to see that. Like, I think it's just dudes who hate women who just want to see women get punched in the face. Stop with that shit, people. That's like last week, people asking about Misha Tate nudes. Be a better person. Just stop with this stupidity is the best I can describe it. That question just annoys the piss out of me. Question number 4 is, would you rather commentate with Rogan at a UFC event or do a fight companion? And that one is easy. I would much rather do a fight companion, especially if you can let me pick the other guys that'll be on it. I belong nowhere near cage side commenting fights. I'm just a dude who likes to watch the sport. I don't have any martial arts experience. I've told people I do want to get into jiu-jitsu eventually, but even if I was just doing jiu-jitsu, I am nowhere near qualified to commentate fights. Give me that fight companion. They did add in the question, drinking beers at the fight companion. I don't drink. I don't smoke. I'm the boring white guy. Sorry, but throw me in a room with Rogan. Let me choose my. Let me bring Callan and Bert Kreischer in as the other two, and maybe Theo Vaughn. I want to bring the guys who don't know as much about fighting. I think that'd be the most entertaining one to do. So give me that fight companion any day of the week. And then question 5 was, this is the non-MMA question I've been looking forward to. I made this 5th for a reason. Is, what are your in-game predictions? And boy, oh boy, this is the week, people. If you're a Marvel fan like me, this is better than Easter. This is better than Christmas. This is better than Thanksgiving, Halloween. This is all them rolled into one. It's in-game week, baby. I am extremely excited. I haven't decided which theater I'm going to see it at. I've been keeping track of all the seats that are available, because all the theaters around me, you have to reserve seating for all the movies. I've been keeping track. It is in-game week. I am hyped. There have been huge spoilers that got leaked. About 10 minutes of footage did get leaked to the video. I saw about 2 minutes of that because I can't hear about it and not look at it a little bit. The 2 minutes I saw it, great googly moogly. We are in for a ride, people. But what are my predictions? I'm a big fan of which this is pretty much confirmed if you just know anything about Marvel. They're going to be using the quantum realm. They're most likely going back in time, trying to get the stones back before Thanos can get them. I don't want to ruin anything for people because I have seen some of that footage, and I do feel like a good bit of the fans don't keep track of like every ounce like I do. But we're gonna see a little bit of time travel, is my guess. I believe the directors confirmed at least one Avenger will die. Um, the running fan theories are it's going to be Captain America, Iron Man. One of my favorite conspiracy theories is that I believe Captain America. If someone's going to die, it's going to be Captain America most likely. I hope he doesn't, obviously, but that's going to be the one if someone's going to die. So that's my theory for that one. My favorite conspiracy theory though is the Iron Man left arm conspiracy. Excuse me. And it's that Tony has been set up since the very first scene of Iron Man 1 to lose his left arm using the gauntlet. If you watch the movies, you pay attention enough, every movie Tony is either hurting his left arm or his left arm is still being rehabbed. The very first shot of the MCU was Tony's left arm. It's so weird. It's such a weird conspiracy. That's why I love it so much. The very first shot of Iron Man 1 was a close-up on Tony's left arm drinking in the back of the Humvee. Every time he gets hurt, it's his left arm. He got stabbed on his left side by Thanos in Infinity War. That was the side of his armor that got ripped off. That's the side that got hurt when he fought Winter Soldier in Civil War. That's the side that's always in the sling when he's hurt. I love that theory because we know with the gauntlet, Thanos used it in Infinity War, and it blew the gauntlet apart. It looked all not rusted. It looked like it was just destroyed almost, but still on his hand. And that's the Mad Titan using that. So you got to think if a human's going to use that Infinity Gauntlet or some form of an Infinity Gauntlet, it's either going to kill them or it's going to take their arm off. It's just going to blow their arm off, which I would love to see. Tony gets a cool robot arm after that. They've dropped some weird hints for it. Again, I'm trying so hard not to spoil stuff because I did see those spoilers. People, don't spoil it for anybody else. If you're following Colby Covington for some reason, now's the time to fucking unfollow him. He did spoil Infinity War for a lot of people. You don't want that to happen. I'm surprised he hasn't done it already, to be honest with you, given that those 10 minutes footage are out. Because there were some gigantic spoilers in there. Don't spoil it for people. If you're a Marvel fan, go out, see the movie, enjoy it. I'm going to try and see it either Thursday or Friday. There's no way I'm waiting past that to see it. We might even make a post just for people to talk about it on my page, since I know we do have a lot of Marvel fans. That's going to wrap it up for this podcast. I can't reveal my theories for in game because some of my theories were confirmed true in those spoilers, so I don't want to say them. I don't want to run the risk of ruining someone's weekend. For a lot of people like me, this has been like over 10 years in the building for this movie, and we're all so hyped. I'm a full Marvel nerd when it comes to this. I love the MCU. That's part of my childhood. That's part of me growing up. It's some of the best entertainment. That was some of the only movies me and my dad got along and could agree to watch. With our bit of a rocky relationship. Me and my brother both love them. All my friends like them. I'm hyped, people. This has been what I would consider a very shitty podcast. I'm not going to lie about it. It was very disheveled. I didn't really want to do it today. Sick all weekend. Wasn't able to watch all the fights like I should have. I've been trying to watch the fights more. Like, I've watched every fight the last 3 weeks for the first 3 podcasts. I watched every fight I could. This week they were just bad times. Just couldn't watch them. So I feel bad about that I wasn't able to give more in-depth review of that. I know people want me to interview people. I'm working on that. Even if I can't get it lined up, with Monday when I like to record the podcast, if I have to interview someone on Wednesday or something, I'm more than happy to interview them and just release the interview part, not even release, additional stuff to go with the podcast. So I'm working on that, people. I'm sorry it's still, taking a while to get that going. Just busy with other stuff, having to find times where I can figure stuff out, having to test it myself. I do apologize for that. I know I'm 4 episodes in by now. I should be interviewing people. I'm sorry. Everything's going to be over Skype when I eventually do it. So really, this is just a shit show podcast. I apologize for that. I hope everybody has a good week. We have Fort Lauderdale, UFC Fort Lauderdale coming up. We have the Bellator Rory 2 title fight card coming up. We have In-Game coming up this week. I hope everybody has a good week. We have some good fights coming up. We have some entertaining shit coming up. So besides that, everybody, thank you for listening to the podcast, especially if you're listening to this dumpster fire that's going to be this podcast. Thank you for listening. Subscribe to the channel. I am doing the giveaway when I hit 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. I keep forgetting to mention that. I have a giveaway prize that only 2 have been made. It's a little bit unique. It's not what you would expect. It's MMA Nerds branded. something that, again, only two have been made in the world. I'm keeping one for myself. So if you win it, you're going to be the only person who has it. We're going to give away that prize. We're going to bundle some t-shirts in it with from Love MMA Apparel. I might throw in something autographed that I have sitting on my shelf from a fighter. I don't know. I'm gonna try to make it a cool package for whatever it's all going to be. I know a few things that are 100% going to be in it. So when I do hit 1,000 subscribers on the YouTube channel, that's what we're going to do. I'm hoping to make it open to anyone in the world. It's going to be costly to ship what it is, but that's, oh well, it's cool stuff. So like the podcast, subscribe to the podcast, comment on the videos, do whatever you want. I'm sure I'll get 2 or 3 comments about my voice. You people seem to love talking about that. So I've tried to end this like 6 times now. So thank you for listening. Let's have some fun this week. Be on the lookout for some good shit. Everybody have a good week. Bye.